With current challenges in the global economy brought about by COVID-19, new and innovative strategies are emerging in a bid to stimulate and sustain growth in national economies. Entrepreneurship is one model that is deemed critical to the formulation and implementation of these strategies. Nigeria is not an exception, as entrepreneurship has been promoting Nigeria's economic development, contributing immensely to the country's exit from recession late last year, with agriculture and ICT playing prominent roles. However, even before COVID-19, there have been several challenges that have affected entrepreneurship developments across the country, including access to finance, poor infrastructure, multiple taxation, and inconsistent government policies, among others. Now, how can these challenges be mitigated towards promoting an entrepreneurship culture in Nigeria? Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa, and experts maintain that there is a great potential and prospect for entrepreneurship development. How can this potential of entrepreneurship development be harnessed? Well, these are some topical issues on the front burner of today's edition of the program. I'm Dennis Adigunloye. Welcome to Nigeria Today. All right, with me in the studio to discuss strengthening entrepreneurship culture in Nigeria, we have Joy Essien, an entrepreneur. You're very welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you. It's so good to be here again.
Again, you're very welcome again. And also joining us via Zoom, we have Retson Tidike. I hope I got that correct. He is also an entrepreneur. You're welcome also to the program.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure being here with you all the time. I love this program.
Great. We appreciate. Thank you. I will come back to you shortly. Let me come to our guest first in the studio, Joy Essien. How far, or should I say, would you believe that there is an entrepreneurship culture as we are currently in Nigeria?
Yes, and I am a living example of that fact. It's a very strong culture. The average Nigerian youth always wants to have something they're known for. We somehow don't find ourselves in a society where everything is provided. You have to pick up your cutlass yourself, and clear your bush path. I think we come to this realization as soon as we're out of the university, if not before. So yes, there is that culture.
And as things are currently in the country, unemployment rates are quite high. Given this known fact, do you think youth should venture into entrepreneurship?
It's a very rugged terrain. It's not something you would jump into, or else the way you jump in is the same way you're going to jump out. I wouldn't advise just anybody to venture. You have to be ready. You need to understand the terrain, what it would demand of you. Most times I tell people to discover themselves first, because there are so many distractions, there's so many things going on in the entrepreneurial space. If you haven't developed yourself and then discovered yourself and then gone through certain personal developments, you would find yourself running into murky waters, getting your fingers burnt, or finding yourself in places you never really it's not something I would advise anyone to venture into, but it is something that would help you develop yourself. You would find out certain things you didn't know about yourself. So I would welcome anyone who wants to, but I will not just tell anybody to go into entrepreneurship.
All right, I'll come back to you shortly on how you got yourself into entrepreneurship, what kind of obstacles you had to overcome. But for now, let's go to our guests joining us via Zoom, Retson Tidike. Mr. Retson, as I'm sure you heard, entrepreneurship, and as you know, is definitely not something to go into for the faint-hearted. How would you assess entrepreneurship culture as it is currently in the country?
Well, we have to, she's right when she said it is not something for the faint-hearted. The reality is this: Nigeria, majority of Nigerians are entrepreneurs in spirit, in culture, in attitude, and in approach to general everyday today life or living. What is necessary is how, as a nation, we embed that culture, that process into a system of economic sustainable process. Because the reality is this: the small and medium enterprise drive industrialization and regrowth. And if you look at Nigeria, the informal sector contributes a lot towards our growth as a nation. So no matter the challenges that is faced, what is undeniable is that spirit of the Nigerian. And that is why everywhere we go to, they always tell you that if you can survive in Nigeria, there is no place you cannot survive in the world. I always tell everybody that as a farmer, if I can do well as a farmer in Nigeria, I will be a multi-billionaire as a farmer in any country in the world. So while it is tough, while it is hard, while it is difficult to get going in Nigeria because of lack of the infrastructural support, like you rightly said, because of lack of the challenges of policies, or because of lack of government at all levels keen into mobilizing the Nigerian entrepreneurial spirit towards the nationalism effort of growing Nigeria for Nigeria first. The underlying dynamics is that we have survived as a nation so far because of that culture of doing it by every means possible, by every means necessary, and for the greater good of our people. So yes, it's tough, but the reality is simple. This is Niger. Nothing when we know the feet do. And that is how we survive.
All right, and given the dwindling oil revenues and impact on the nation's economy, given all that you've just said, the question I put to Joy: would you encourage youths to go into entrepreneurship as a career option in the long term?
Absolutely. In short, it is even a blessing to Nigerian youths that we are having the challenges of low oil prices, and it is not going to change in the next decade going forward. So this is the time for Nigerian youth to get engaged in entrepreneurship opportunities across the Nigerian nation, particularly in agriculture. But see, if we are asking the Nigerian youth to get involved, something must change at the state, at the local government level. Look, it is only at the federal government level that there is a semblance of real entrepreneurial support. There is a semblance of real drive to support the Nigerian youth. There's a semblance of real interest toward developing the Nigerian spirit. Now, you cannot survive when only the federal government wants the Nigerian entrepreneurial spirit to be developed at all levels. So, for example, if I, a young man, young Urobo man, can run the biggest community farm project in Nasarawa State and supported by the federal government, it means that there are millions of Nigerian entrepreneurs, young Nigerians who are ready to go into agriculture, define the Nigerian food revolution, define the Nigerian food security problem, define the Nigerian food structure, the Nigerian agricultural structure as a source of solving these security challenges. But they need a foundation to be able to make this work. Because see, every entrepreneurial project opportunities that are available there needs financing, need infrastructure, and need the right policy support framework. So don't tell the Nigerian and young youth to go into agriculture, to become entrepreneurs, and they are going to build their own roads like myself. and they're going to build their own power line like myself, and they're going to build their own dams like myself. No. And nobody should tell us that government has no business in business, because the West that preached that doctrine, in 2020 alone, American farmers, both young, old, and women, received over $100 billion subsidies to support them. Whereas if you come to Nigeria, you tell us to go into agriculture and we are ready, we don't have tractors, we don't have planters, we don't have combine harvesters, we don't have power. How do you expect us to get this job done? So this is the time, this is the best time our youth must be engaged, and you have to make agriculture sexy. You have to make agriculture interesting. So you have, in my farm, for example, you have a football field, you have a volleyball court, you have badminton court, you have residence, you have DSCV, you have cinema hall, you have all of this. They must see agriculture as a foundation of free national development, and they must see entrepreneurship as the base upon which a nation can be great, can be legendary, and can survive. So yes, this is the moment to reawaken the Nigerian entrepreneurial capacity in our youth, because that is the only path to greatness that this country has.
Okay, thanks for that. Coming back to Joy in the studio, give us an idea of what kind of challenges you faced when you were in the early stages of your venture into entrepreneurship. What kind of obstacles did you have to overcome?
The first hurdle was funding. Mm-hmm. That is the most common, the typical challenge that every entrepreneur would face. Banks give loans and all that, but you have to meet certain criteria, and not everyone has their paperwork in order. So the first hurdle was funding. We couldn't get from the bank, even with all our papers intact, but we got from friends. We had built integrity over a period of time. So we tell people integrity is the new currency. There are people who are able to raise money because of their goodwill. So we got very good people around us who were able to invest, and then business was able to take off from there. We didn't get exactly how much we were looking at, but we got enough to start from, and then we started building from there. So that was the first challenge, funding. And then another challenge is trust. We have a backlog portfolio of, we have a very clean record. Okay. So if I come out and tell you this, there's that chance that you would believe me, but not every business has that. Okay. So we had to build trust, especially when you're going to the area we call cold markets, people who don't really know you. You have to assure them that you are genuine, you're legitimate, you're not going to run away with their money. You know, online when we sell products, we let people have that confidence through the kind of content that we give out, that this one is not going to, I'm not going to place an order and this one will block me or run away, you know. So the next step after funding, I think, was that trust. Some people have it, some don't. Some have to, you know, recover from, you know. So, yeah, so these are some of the challenges that we face. And then I think another pressing one has to do with the logistics, moving products from one place to the other. This is where security comes into play, and sometimes you hear stories at the park where you want to send goods that some buses were attacked, some people were kidnapped, and it stalls business. I think it affects everyone who has a product-based business. Yeah.
Okay, well, so we'll come back onto this point, but for now, we'll take a quick break. The program is Nigeria Today. Stay with us. We'll be back after this. right, you're welcome back. The program is Nigeria Today for those just tuning in. Today we are discussing strengthening the entrepreneurship culture in Nigeria. We have Joy Essien here in the studio, an entrepreneur, and also via Zoom we also have Retson Tidike, who is also an entrepreneur. Mr. Retson, there are several government policies that aim to assist entrepreneurship developments, such as the conditional cash transfer initiative, among others. How are these, would you say, impacting businesses across the country?
Well, we have to, first and foremost, like I said earlier, and I want to be quoted, if you have three key structures of government in Nigeria: the federal, the state, and the local government. If every single one of those is able to do what the federal government is currently doing, the impact and the effect of government policy will be massive, and it will lead to what the revolution we are seeking right now in rural Nigeria. Because if you look at rural Nigeria today, that is what has become a quagmire of problems for the Nigerian state. It needs to become the opportunity that it should be. We must deploy that population into productive use for the interest of the Nigerian state. So if you talk about the conditional cash transfer for the elderly, if you talk about the COVID support program for the federal government for Nigerian youth, about 20 farmers from around me in Gate, Kokona local government, got that support from the federal government. If you talk of the Youth Empowerment Initiative of the federal government and programs like that, what they do is that at a time of slow economic growth, those help to stimulate productivity and also consumption. Now, but you need that to be replicated across board, because the private sector is not capable of stimulating real growth, because the financing that are required cannot be provided by the private sector. It is only government that have that wide net, that capacity to be able to support. So government at all levels must provide those opportunities for her citizens of regrowth. Now I'm going to just add a little bit to what she said when you talk about challenges. Look, the biggest source for entrepreneurs in Nigeria is financing. We must get out of this where you want the Nigerian youth, the Nigerian entrepreneur, to become a banker or a lender with all of the abilities to meet all the demands that the bankers will place on the table. The banks and both the federal, state, and local government must understand that the informal sector is a major component of the Nigerian economy. And so the lending must be simplified. If companies like Kia, for example, are able to lend to people like us, okay, without asking for collateral, why should the federal, state, or the local government and the banks be asking me, who is in rural Nigeria, to provide collateral in Abuja or Lagos? Where am I going to see it? So financing is becoming difficult because of the bottlenecks that are placed on the part of young Nigerians who are passionate about building the Nigerian nation, who are willing to give their all, but are being limited by that challenge. Now, other than the challenge of financing, also the challenge of short-termism, what I call the miracle economy. So many investors, so many banks, and so many institutions want the Nigerian entrepreneur to make 100% return in a year, 50% return in 6 months, 30% return in 3 months. That kind of economy does not exist. The naivety of the entrepreneur pulls them towards going for loans that are almost impossible to pay at the end of the day. However, once programs of the state, federal, and local government come into effect, what they do is that they help these entrepreneurs with those kind of financing opportunities. The entrepreneurs are now given the responsibility to go out and work, knowing that there is backing, knowing that there is financial backing, knowing that there is infrastructural backing, and knowing that there is developmental training backing. But once those ones are lacking, it's impossible for the entrepreneur to be developmental. It is possible for a developmental culture to be sustained, to become a part of us. I always tell Nigerians that the British is a constitutional monarch. They practically have no constitution, but they develop constitution over generation of what? Of doing the same thing over and over again and again and again. That is how you build a culture. That is how the Chinese built a culture. That is how Asians build a culture. That is how Europe built a culture. It is time for Nigeria to sustain rural Nigeria by ensuring that all this program, conditional cash transfer, COVID-19 support program, and all of those are driven to touch real farmers, real entrepreneurs, not audio farmers, not Abuja entrepreneurs, or not Abuja,
All right.
what I call voicemail farmers.
All right. Thanks for that elaborate coverage of those very important issues. Just very briefly, Joy, just firstly, what's your take on state and local government involvement in supporting entrepreneurship? And secondly, what would be your concluding words of advice to those who are passionate about entrepreneurship, want to get into it, but are somehow apprehensive? Very briefly, please.
I haven't operated at that local government level, so I really can't say much about it. But what I feel governments should do more to aid entrepreneurs is create an ease for doing business. There's so many hurdles. One of the first things President Trump did when he came into office was to reduce taxes. Too many taxing, doing this, too many regulation. Regulation is very, very important, but it shouldn't be in a way that
Too regimented, or
budding entrepreneurs are discouraged. So they should create that ease of doing business. I happen to be in a business that involves importing stuff.
Yeah.
It's not easy bringing things into the country.
I can imagine that. Yes.
Yeah, so I just want to lay emphasis on this ease of doing business. What was the second question?
Your brief words of encouragement to those who are passionate about entrepreneurship and want to get into it.
Yes, there are going to be a lot of hurdles. You should be ready. There are times where you go through and you fall back and remember your why. Entrepreneurship is basically solving problems.
Absolutely.
So we are all out here to solve problems and make life easy for everyone. So that should be that's my word of advice.
All right, Joy Essien, many thanks for sharing those thoughts and your experiences with us in entrepreneurship, and thank you for your contributions. And thanks also to Retson Tedeke, who joined us via Zoom, and we appreciate your expertise as well, and your words of encouragement and advice. Thank you very much. And thanks to you out there for watching. Nigeria Today is live every weekday at 7:30 in the evening. Also catch this and other editions on youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. I'm Dennis Adigunloy. Many thanks for your time.